Well, YouTube took down a 2013 video on 911 engineering anomalies. For instance, jumbo jets can't do 500 miles an hour through thick sea level air. An aluminum tube won't pierce a cement steel building and come out the other side, and gasoline won't melt steel. So they took it down and they labeled it hate speech. Wow. So anyway, I attempted to do an appeal, and here's the correspondence and why I've had to threaten court action. Now remember, Candace Owens just made them put back her video after it had been taken down from Facebook because the fact checkers screwed up. Well, this is YouTube fact checkers who have found my video hate speech. Now, after 40 years in politics and 100 elections, you think someone would have noticed I was a hatemonger by now. But this is the first time I've been defamed with that smear. So I wrote an article, and it's called Court Action If YouTube Keeps My 911 Video Down for Hate Speech. So here's a notice of demand for retraction of defamation, which I've now sent to the YouTube legal department. On November 12th, I received the following email. Your video has been removed from YouTube. Hello, King of the Poppers. That's my other channel. As you may know, our community guidelines describe which content we allow and don't allow on YouTube. Your video, Turmel, government's 911 conspiracy theory defended, was flagged to us for review. Upon review, we've determined that it violates our guidelines and we've removed it from YouTube. We know this might be disappointing, but it's important to us that YouTube is a safe place for all. If content breaks our rules, we remove it. If you think we've made a mistake, you can appeal and we'll take another look. Keep reading for more details. Video content restrictions. Content glorifying or inciting violence against another person or group is not allowed. Person or group. Talking about 911 engineering anomalies, who's going to end up hated? We don't allow any content that encourages hatred of another person or group of people based on their membership in a protected group. What, engineers who screwed up? Protected group? We review educational, documentary, artistic, and scientific content on a case-by-case basis. Limited exceptions are made for content with sufficient and appropriate context and where the purpose of posting is clear. Impact on your account. This removal has not resulted in a community guideline strike or penalty on your account. However, we still encourage you to review all of your content to make sure it's in line with our community guidelines. Well, they didn't tell me what was wrong, so what do they want me to go looking for? Additional violations could result in strikes against your account or even lead to account termination. How you can respond. If you believe there was a mistake, we'd like to hear from you to appeal this removal. Please submit this form. Well, I submitted it, but it said, oops. So I sent my complaint elsewhere. Our team will thoroughly review your appeal and can contact you again. So, Turmel, government's 911 conspiracy theory defended. I gave the link, and it says it now shows this video has been removed for violating YouTube's policy on hate speech. 3, checking YouTube's hate speech policy at this site. Hate speech is not allowed on YouTube. We remove content promoting violence or hatred against individuals or groups based on any of the following attributes. Age, caste, disability, ethnicity, gender identity and expression, nationality, race, immigration status, religion, sex, gender, sexual orientation, victims of a major violent event in their kin, and veteran status. What's 911 engineering anomalies going to make you hate those groups for? It doesn't make sense. Here are examples of hate speech not allowed on YouTube. I'm so glad this violent event happened. They got what they deserved, referring to persons with the attributes noted above. Person with attributes noted above are dogs, or person with attributes noted above are like animals. That's what they call hate speech. And they've accused me of doing something similar to that to one of those groups by talking about 911 engineering anomalies. What happens if content violates this policy? If your content violates the policy, we'll remove the content and send you an email to let you know. If this is your first time violating our community guidelines, you'll get a warning with no penalty to your channel. If it's not, we'll issue a strike against your channel. If you get 3 strikes, your channel will be terminated. You can learn about our strike system here. We may also terminate your channel or account for repeated violations of community guidelines or terms of service, which they don't tell you what you did. They just find you guilty, as well as due to a single case of severe abuse or when the channel is dedicated to a policy violation, whatever that means. If we think your content comes close to hate speech, we may limit YouTube features available for that content, so they're going to hide it if they think it comes close. 4, on November 15th, I submitted an appeal to the YouTube Community Outreach Team. One of my videos from 2013 was taken down. The submit an appeal form keeps saying, oops, yes, I'd like to be contacted by email. On November 16th, YT Partner Support from Google responded, YouTube, follow up to your recent survey response. I went to their survey and gave them my complaint. My name is Scott, and I'm reaching out on behalf of YouTube's Community Outreach Team to thank you for replying to our recent survey. We remove content that violates our community guidelines. However, we understand that we sometimes make mistakes. If you think your content doesn't violate the community guidelines and either received a strike or was removed in error, you can appeal following the steps below. Now, I don't know why it was removed. They didn't tell me. Sometimes we remove content without issuing a strike or penalty on your channel. Here's how you can appeal when this happens. Okay, after you submit an appeal, you'll get an email from YouTube letting you know the result of your appeal request. 6, on November the 18th, I responded. Like I said, the video's gone, so I want to appeal to get the video put back. On November 19th, they wrote, my apologies for the inconvenience. I'm afraid that if the video is no longer in YouTube Studio, then there may not be an option to retrieve it. Please provide me with a screenshot of where the video used to be and let me know if it was deleted on your end. Well, no, of course not. I mean, 7 years later, it disappears. Additionally, please forward me the entire email you received. All right, on November 19th, I provided the information. November 23rd, he wrote back, thank you for providing me the screenshot. I've escalated this case over to policy and enforcement. So on November 24th, he wrote back, as previously mentioned, I reached out to the appropriate team that handles the process of recovering any removed videos with your concern. Unfortunately, it seems that upon review, we've found that the video in question is correctly taken down for non-compliance with our community guidelines, hate speech policies. So they correctly accuse me and convict me of hate speech, but they didn't tell me what I did. 11, upon another review of my video on 911 engineering anomalies, YouTube has ruled it remains correctly taken down as hate speech. I've been convicted of promoting violence or hatred against individuals or groups based on any of the following attributes. Age, caste, you know those groups. Imagine that. So, 12, I must ask, against which protected group did you feel a video on engineering anomalies promoted violence or hate? How could a video on 911 engineering anomalies promote violence or hate against persons with a protected attribute? It's very doubtful that my engineering video contained anything like, I'm glad it happened, they got what they deserved, people like that are dogs or animals. This letter serves as my notice of demand for retraction of defamation. I'm a well-known politician with a pristine reputation. 41 years in politics, no one's ever accused me of doing anything sleazy, underhanded, or dirty. Well, other than getting my underground casino busted, but that's, like the cop said, Turmel ran an honest game. So in 2000, I spoke at the Millennium Assembly, and my Let's Time Bank community currency software was proposed as a uni-Let's in the Millennium Declaration C6 to governments to restructure the global financial architecture with an alternative time-based currency. And I gave the link to the Millennium Declaration, the original one. They've now changed it, and they substituted a phony Millennium Declaration for what used to be the original one. Isn't that neat? They had to get rid of time-based currency so bad, they switched out the original Millennium Declaration, the most important document in that millennium, and they switched in a ringer. That's how dangerous I am. I dare take the site smartestmanonearth.ca and smartestman.ca for short. That is not too bold a claim for a candidate with the same education as Mr. Spock. Science and game theory, deriving the winningest way to go with math. My specialty. The Ontario Provincial Police Project Robin Hood Common Gaming House raid on 28-table Casino Turmel in 1993 provided Sergeant Joe Fortia testifying that despite my long criminal record for gambling, that Turmel ran honest games. And I put the link. I hold the Guinness record for most elections contested. 101 over my 40-year career, including for Prime Minister of Canada. A YouTube search for Prime Minister of the planet shows I'm the only declared candidate. The hate-mongering conviction that someone in the Guinness Book of Records for contesting elections and running to lead the planet would seem to be the antithesis of my global efforts. So you can see how YouTube labeling my video hate speech could impede my global campaign for the Spock upgrade of bank software to get everyone an interest-free central bank credit card. And smartestman.ca/1974 explains. Candace Owens suing the fact checkers, just had a Facebook false rating taken down with a correction admitting their fault. Relief claimed. I make demand for A, reinstatement of my video, B, retraction of the hate speech conviction, and C, apology for the hate-mongering smear. If not, I will resort to the Canadian courts and also seek D, financial damages, whatever the court wants to give me. If you think it's an idle threat, I am Canada's most prolific guerrilla lawyer. In the 1980s and 90s, I launched court challenges against governments, banks, corporations. A, in the 1980s, 6 times asked the Supreme Court of Canada to restrict bank computers to a pure service charge and abolish the interest charge. B, in 2003, I made governments stay 4,000 marijuana charges. smartestman.ca/stay4k.jpg. C, I recently provided federal court templates for over 700 plaintiffs to sue Health Canada for slow permit processing and unconscionable conditions, and one, no expiry of old permits while the renewal was being processed. What happened was people's permits were expiring, and I gave them motions to ask the judge for instant interim remedy to grant them an exemption while they waited for their permit to be processed. And they got so tired of being dragged into court for people who were facing a renewal and it was going to expire in 3 days that they changed the rules and said, if you filed your renewal, your old permit stays good. I did that. And 2, no more permit backdating to the date the doctor signed, losing the time for processing. So in the old days, you got your permit, it lasted for a year, what the doctor prescribed. But in the new regime, they started backdating the permits to before they processed them to when the doctor signed. So if it took 6 months to process, you only got a 6-month permit. And I made them stop backdating permits. And 3, no more keeping the medical document and forcing people who change growers to get a new one. Imagine, the old rules said, if we decide we don't want you as a customer, we don't give you back your medical document, you got to go back to see a doctor to get a new one to apply to a new licensed producer. Well, who could dream up ugly stuff like that? And D, I have sued for defamation before. I know defamation law. Most notably, Dragon's Den. And I gave a site, a YouTube, which I took to the Supreme Court. Now, I lost because of the consent to be defamed in their 5-page, 35-clause form sprung on me for signing 15 minutes before the show. That's what they did. They said, well, here's a consent form. You got to sign this just before the show. What the hell? Okay, I signed it. And in it, it says, we got the right to defame you if we want. Wow. We got the right to commit crime against you. You can't do anything. And they won, even though in other jurisdictions that kind of clause is thrown out. So, given this hate speech conviction counts towards having my channel shut down, I have no choice but to demand remedy. So if remedy has not been effected in 10 days, I will file an Ontario Superior Court statement of claim on your office in Toronto, Ontario for defamation. I hope you can disabuse your censors of the notion that a report on 911 engineering anomalies can be construed as inciting violence or hate against a protected group, and remedy the situation before it gets official. John C. Turmel, BNG, plaintiff. So that basically is my complaint to YouTube for taking down my video for no good reason and labeling me a hate monger. I'm a professional gambler. I've sat at the tables for thousands of hours with all races, all religions. How dare they accuse me of being a hate monger? So they're going to have to retract and apologize, or we're going to ask a judge to see if he can make them do it. And like I said, I've done this before. I'm Canada's best known guerrilla lawyer. You've done it for 40 years in the courts. There's not much more you need to learn. So that's it. Let's see what happens.